Let's
All right,
go.
everybody, welcome back to episode number 4 of Semi-Analysis Weekly. I'm Jordan Nanos here with Doug O'Loughlin again, and this week we've got Jeremie Eliahou Ontiveros. We've got part of his attention, the rest of his attention is back at the offices of the Semi-Analysis Data Center model, where Jeremie is Claude coding 4 separate windows at a time right now. Can we get you to look at the camera for a second and introduce yourself?
Bro, let me vibe code. It's more valuable. I have no time for this.
Yeah, keep him away from it.
Yeah. Sure,
And
sure, sure.
yeah, just before we get started, for all the vibe coders in the audience, if you're listening to this, we are hosting a hackathon the day before GTC kicks off, Sunday, March 20 something, I think, 14th, 15th, I don't know, whatever it is. The Sunday before GTC, yeah, we're going to be on site giving out grants for access to compute as well as Claude Code tokens and lots of cool prizes from lots of great sponsors. So if you're following semi-analysis and you're attending GTC, definitely, yeah, sign up to be part of the hackathon. It's gonna be fun. You guys excited for GTC?
Yeah,
Well, it's
bro.
funny. I'm not going, bro. So not me.
Doug, why aren't you going?
Because everyone's going to GTC, so I'm going to OFC instead.
Yeah, good call.
We have to have some presence at the other place, you know. Like we have like a meter happy hour, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna just send the dregs?" No, someone's got to show up. I guess I'm the dregs, is what I'm saying. No, but I think there's a lot of. I'll be honest with you, you guys are gonna have it totally under control. I think we're rolling pretty deep to GTC.
Yeah, we got a big crew. The guys who've been working on Inference X are going to be presenting a nice session. If you guys are listening, search up that in the GTC catalog. I'm real excited for the LPU Heart GPU session presented by the former founder CEO Ross, Jonathan Ross. And
Yeah, LPU session is going to be, I think, probably going to be the sold out session where it's like people standing room only. That's definitely the big thing. People are getting really jumpy about SRAM. They're like, because everyone is super, like, this is just investor brain. Everyone's so long HBM right now. They're all scared that SRAM is going to take over HBM and you got to sell the HBM. That's like the dumbest narrative I've heard recently. But people are so scared because they're so long HBM. So yeah, that's kind of been the like an interesting, I don't know. LP is going to be interesting.
yeah, sweet. Okay. Well, for the show this week, we got a plan to talk about 3 big topics. The first is the article that we put out on the free tier newsletter. Jeremie's here to talk about that primarily. The title of that article is "Are AI Data Centers Increasing Consumers' Electricity Prices?" So the guy who leads our data center model, energy model, industrials model, that whole team, probably the best one to pick brain on that. Then we're going to talk about the Department of War versus Anthropic. Lots of news about that. In anyway, and then finally, yeah, just our internal usage of Claude Code going up. We're all working on dashboards these days. You know, we used to sell these models, which are just like spreadsheets and numbers, and now we need to do real-time visualization in the dashboard. That's the future.
We are building dashboards for business insight as semi-analysis. Functional dashboards for business insight.
So what comes after dashboard? It's the future.
AGI, bro. It's just
No, we've
directly
got
piped.
so the
Device,
first
bro.
dashboard from semi-analysis was the Inference X dashboard, and I think we already know, which is that the guys are piloting a feature internally right now to have a chatbot on top of the dashboard. So you don't even need to read the dashboard anymore. You can ask the agent to explain to you what the conclusion of the dashboard is.
I think next up you just have like, I don't know, some earbuds or glasses and you just ask them, hey, what's going on? You're walking on the street and you're like, scrape this data set with 500 megabytes of data for me and do it ASAP, bro.
How are you
Why
vibe
not?
coding? Are you typing still, Jeremy, or have you graduated to audio, speech to text?
Yeah, I'm still typing. I'm kind of a boomer, man. Took me a month to join the cloud code mania. I'm
I actually I want to do speech to text, but I feel like the office is a disruptive place for it. And honestly, I don't know if you guys are like Jeremy's been to the office, Jordan's never been to the office. We're actually
Mhm.
rolling so deep today. It is completely packed. Like
Hell
it
yeah.
is yeah, David has to sit in the other room. So I can't
Oh yeah.
imagine we're just like all yelling at each other while we're vibe coding. That's probably the biggest impediment. If I could whisper code, like literally or something, that would be my best. That would
That is
like
the
doing
New
this
York
podcast.
City office too. So which office is bigger now, New York or Singapore?
In terms of headcount, I think we're well. Okay, I think Singapore still
Okay.
because there's two visitors today. There's two visitors. Eric and Eric and Bowen are here.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Okay. Let's talk about the article. I'm gonna share my screen and yeah, we can kick things off. So this article I think came as like a bit of a response to a lot of people in the news who are talking about, well, really Trump, who was talking about like legislation related to AI data centers and how, whether or not they're going to increase people's electricity bills. So obviously, this is the latest article here. And yeah, it's a nice one. 7,000 words. How many tokens, Jeremy? It's a big one.
Actually, that was my very first cloud code project. You can see some of the charts that are a little bit not in our usual style. That was the first thing I ever did with cloud code. Is a lot of these analysis backing it up. To be clear, it doesn't mean it's it's made up. I spent a lot of time trying to actually understand the math and the data it processes. But like this is a great textbook example of how you can use cloud code, just because a lot of these data on like electricity prices for consumers, for commercial users by state or by node or whatever, all of that is available for free actually. So you can just basically prompt it to get all of that and then you can just fact check it yourself to make sure it's correct and make sure the math and like capacity and such is accurate as well.
Yeah, makes sense. So can you kind of talk through the thesis of the article? I think the high level is like, yeah, there is an impact on the grid for from data centers, from a bunch of capacity coming online, but it kind of depends on how the grid is managed and kind of depends on which data center or which timeline we're talking about in terms of what impact it can have on consumers' prices.
Yeah, so look, basically the premise everyone is saying is energy is the constraint, power prices are gonna go up, and it's all the fault of AI data centers, right? Which kind of makes sense. There's a big caveats to that, but the thing is, people over-index always on the short-term data points that they see, and there's a pretty flashy one, which is everything in the PJM area, which includes Virginia, New Jersey, Ohio, some of these big states. Many people in these states faced a 15-20% increase in their bill versus 2 years ago, right? So obviously, when you have such an increase and it's in the it's in the era of AI, people are saying this is because of data centers, and to some extent it is. But the point we make in the article is that it's actually way more driven by market design, and a lot of that is a function of, to some extent, errors. To some extent, I would argue a design that is not properly adapted to AI. And so, if anything, like there was, like this is more of a function of the last 20 years. The U.S. had zero load growth. This is the first time in 20 years we see load growth, and it's pretty clear that this market was not designed for an environment where load is growing. If that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, it makes total sense. And when I was reading through this, I think the chart that like stuck out to me the most was this one, which kind of covered the PGM model that they use to forecast what that load growth is going to be and how they've been making revisions. And because of the way in which they run an auction to let
yeah.
energy providers, you know, set the price that they're going to run power at 2 years ahead of time. If they miss on this forecast, then all of a sudden it costs everybody a whole bunch of money. And we think fundamentally like the accuracy of their forecast is bad because they're not tracking the data centers properly, at least like to the quality with which we can when we use our data in our data center model.
And look, the other big problem, and this is where we contrast with ERCOT, is that this is an auction that is typically run once a year. Demand is based on their forecast, supply is based on the way they analyze supply. All of that is subject to judgment calls. And so then you basically go back to the debate, communism versus capitalism, right, to some extent, because in ERCOT you basically let market participants evaluate these items on a real-time basis. In PJM you're talking about an auction again once a year. They can make mistakes, and so basically like having the ability to react real time enables the market to react to the signals, right? Whereas if you run it like the point is ERCOT can see it coming ahead of time, can place generation ahead of time, whereas in PJM because the pricing signals are not set properly, everything is just late, and you just create a mechanism that is constrained and just basically becomes bottlenecked.
Yeah. And maybe just to define for the audience, ERCOT is the
Yeah.
utility in Texas where there's plenty of data centers coming online right now. And then PJM's the one. PJM stands for Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland or something, but it covers all of like Data Center Alley through Virginia and Ohio, which is like the US East one and stuff for all the major cloud providers. So it's like kind of the two most important grids when it comes to data centers coming online, and they have that completely different approach to how they set prices. One's real time and one's an auction yearly, but it happens 2 years in advance. I don't even understand how that price gets set for PJM, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, like basically via their demand forecasts, they analyze what their needs are, and then it becomes a question of like what is the marginal generator that can meet that need, and what prices do these generators need to be able to meet the capacity requirement, right? So if you have plenty of generation that can't serve the specific requirement, then everything is fine. Prices don't go up like that, but if you have demand that surges, supply is tight, then that creates an imbalance, right? It's typical market. But the key here, and especially on the supply side, like it's really interesting to think about how does a regulator evaluate supply versus can you let the market real time price it? And the point of the regulator evaluating supply is really one that strikes because we put out that chart that shows how supply in PJM evolved over time. And you see that in the last 4 years, it went down by something like 40 gigawatts, like minus 20%, if I remember correctly, top of my head. So it's pretty massive supply cut in just a few years. And to some extent, it's legit because for real, we had coal power plants that stopped producing power. But if you look at the chart after that, we showed the bridge, and actually a substantial amount of that is driven by methodology changes. But then again, this goes back to like it's their supply forecast. They evaluate supply, and to be clear, this is not to say they made the wrong decision. Like there's a bunch of unusual events that happened that led to this happening the way it happened. So if you show maybe the next one, I don't know if you can change charges.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. So like the thermal accreditation reform, yes, that happened after a horrible winter storm that basically revealed that their power plants were not able to run to the same extent that they thought they could. But again, like this is typically the kind of things that when you have a market, when you have people evaluating their own risk, putting their money at risk, they're typically able to take better decisions. I guess is the history of United States of America over the last 100 years or so.
Yeah, so I guess like two takeaways here. One is that, I guess to be clear about what you say with the excess supply to match that demand over what they forecasted, it roughly means a power plant that sits idle for like 96% of the year and then needs to be paid a whole bunch of money to turn on for those times when you need it. And therefore the price is like really, really high if you haven't turned it on all year for it seems like obvious reasons. The other thing is that just to point out what you were just saying, CFP accreditation reform, meaning how they measure stuff, is responsible for 41% or 14 gigawatts of decline in their total.
Like to be clear, it's legit. There's a real reason. PJM has always been an area that summer peaks. But so
Yeah.
basically the peak load of different areas. In some areas it's summer, in some areas it's winter, depending on how people heat or cool their homes and the weather basically. Um, And so PJM is more of a summer peaking region, but basically they had a pretty bad winter in 2022. There was already a pretty bad one in 2021. And what it made them realize, it's not actually a demand peak, is it peaked higher than expected. That's one thing. The other thing is they realized many of their power plants are actually simultaneously stopped running. The reliability of power plants just is materially impacted when weather conditions are bad, especially when it's cold out there. And basically, they didn't account their supply for the risk of maybe 10 power plants at the same time not working. So to some extent, it's legit. Because the way this works is always to avoid the worst case scenario. So you're forced to take these decisions to make sure like you stress test to the max of their ability, and they realize, okay, this summer is really bad. Many power plants couldn't work as expected, so we have to reset our supply. So to that extent, it's legit. That had never happened. Whereas the way they were measuring supply before was looking at historical. Actually, at the power plant level, they were measuring historical risk. They were not measuring the clustering impact of like when a summer is bad, like many power plants stop working at the same time, as opposed to just one power plant being offline for a moment for whatever reason, right? But again, like if you let that happen real time, people can react to this faster and avoid this unfortunate
Yeah,
supply
it's probably
problems.
like I think it's probably obviously a good thing to have a like move from 170 total gigawatts offered to 156 because you never actually had 170
Yeah, that's
that
right.
you
Yeah.
launched for, right? So I don't think anybody's saying this revision is like a bad thing to do. It's just so funny that at a time where I seem to see so much about people wanting to bring more power generation online, the numbers are moving in the exact opposite direction to the tune of 14 gigawatts. You know, new gas capacity on this same chart in PJM is +3, and new renewables is +1.5 in the
I have a
same time.
question. Do you think this means that coal is going to essentially they're going to delay this? I mean, it's like people have been talking quite a bit about this, right? Like delaying coal. Do you think retirements? Do you think that that's going to start to happen on the margin? This is kind of what this is. I don't
Yeah, I
know,
mean,
high level telling me.
yeah. So there's two things. One is at the federal level, stopping coal power plants, like stopping their retirement plan. That has happened. Is FERC Order 206, if I remember correctly, whatever. A bunch of coal power plants were supposed to retire, and basically they're not going to retire anymore. And then there's another aspect, which is from an economics point of view, some of these power plants are like whatever, 40 years old, 50 years old. They're obviously not the most efficient. So running them is not economical anymore. But if prices are high enough, it becomes economical. And that actually the core issue with energy right now is that you have to balance the consumer expectations of prices staying low, but the fact that like to incentivize new generation to come online, you need prices to actually be high. So that's really one of the big challenges. One of the reasons, there's many others, but one of the reasons why it's tough for generation on the grid to come online. Which is
Yeah,
why we're moving to behind the meter, right? It's like you have way more control to build whatever you want to your needs, as opposed to waiting for the grid to perhaps decide to finally let more folks come in or change, reform something, right?
yeah. And do you think that's so? Like maybe the political aspect of this is that Trump was out there saying he's trying to have all the data center builders or the frontier labs sign on the dotted line that they are not going to increase consumers' electricity prices. The grid operators are probably just like looking for somebody else to blame when they have to increase people's prices. But the vast majority of the data centers that are coming online are using the new stuff, are using behind the grid or behind the meter generation, right? So that's
Actually, not yet. It's gonna be much bigger in 27 or late 26. Uh, Still, the vast majority of data centers coming online right now are grid connected.
okay.
And the majority are under the, to some extent, old regulations. Although, so increasingly what you're seeing is different states or different utilities are negotiating directly with their big hyperscale customers to build a custom tariff, which is like, this is what you are going to pay, which is different from the rate that everyone else is paying, and to basically be sure that their impact on the grid is not like doesn't flow through everyone else, right? So like if you take a step back, like in which context could the AI boom impact retail bills? Like the core thing, especially on the transmission side, any all of the transmission in the U.S. is regulated, which regulated means that it owns required return on equity, which means that if you build a gigantic asset and it's not properly monetized, the utilization rate is not as expected, right? Those costs, because the actual builder must turn a profit regardless, it takes no risk. Those costs actually end up being passed on to the consumer, right? So the massive risk here is that if we overbuild and we have regulations that force an unprofitable asset to be passed on to the customers, then obviously this is the worst case scenario outcome. And so
Yeah.
then the question is like how to make sure this doesn't happen. And there's a few ways to do this. One is customized tariffs, as we discussed earlier, which is like the hyperscaler telling the utility, like all of the upgrades that you're doing on the grid, I'm going to pay for this, or I'm going to pay for the majority of this. If you have to build a new power plant, I'm going to pay for it. And pay for it doesn't necessarily mean pay for the capex. It just means that perhaps you can sign a 15-year, 20-year agreement with the utility. An interesting example was Oracle in Michigan, one of the Stargate data centers actually for OpenAI. Oracle signed, so it's a 1 gigawatt data center, 1 gigawatt IT, 1.4 gigawatt gross, so peak utility. They actually signed a $4 billion commitment with the utility, which is pretty big in this landscape. Imagine all of the gigawatts that we have if all of them have that kind of commitments, utility, probably revenue and capex and all of it is going to go up quite a lot. But anyways, the point being, $2 billion
What's the
dollars.
time frame for that? 4 billion over 10-year, 15.
So it's 4 years, of
Wow.
which there's two things. Sorry. There's two things. So there's an investment period. So that commitment has a 15-year or 20-year actually power prices commitment. But there's also an investment commitment to purchase batteries and put them on the grid to basically increase the overall amount of capacity on the grid. So it's actually a pretty interesting agreement, this one. So $2 billion of batteries. Oracle says I'm going to pay for batteries to improve grid reliability and whatnot. And I'm also going to sign a 20-year agreement to pay you a given amount of money with a minimum demand charge, which means that, and this is actually very interesting, the minimum demand charge, because this means if the load somehow doesn't materialize, they're going to have to pay a charge regardless.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of the new big things on the grid is, again, making sure they pay their fair share to avoid like a scenario where you build new generation and those costs are being passed on to customers if the hyperscaler doesn't consume the load that it was planning to consume.
Wow. Okay. And
So
that,
there's a bunch of interesting stuff being negotiated, but there's no easy solution. So in these cases, like a big commitment like that, but sometimes it's just easier to just build your own power plant.
yeah, it makes sense. I wonder, like, how long in advance did that deal get negotiated for that site that Oracle's going to do? It's not like they can reach an agreement like that in a 6-month timeline for the speed at which some people want to put up data centers these days.
That specific site, I think, began development about 2 years ago. There's a third party involved as well as the data center developer, Correlated Digital. If I remember correctly, it's about 2 years ago they started negotiation on that side. But Oracle signed the deal just a few months ago, I think October, and that data center is going to be operational in 27. So actually, that timeline itself is pretty short. The timeline from which you signed the deal to which the load is going to be operational is just a year and
Yeah,
a half.
it's some 1 to 3 years of negotiating with the utility for a 4-year start to finish of the full data center construction project timeline.
The hope is actually to get it done by 28, the full data center. So there's different timelines here. Batteries are another one. For the battery investment, they said 4 years, but the
Hmm.
hope is the data center will be operational by something like
Right, but
mid
when did
2028.
they I don't know, break ground or get the first permit to say we're going to do this data center? That was like 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, about 2 years ago. Yeah.
So 5 years total to get the whole thing online. And I mean, I guess a lot of people just talk about the queue with these utilities, like trying to actually get a
Yeah.
grid interconnection done and how long that takes. But some of these big data center projects, they are taking 4 years start to finish. So it just seems like get in line and then be willing to pay for some batteries and you can make some of this stuff happen.
Yes, but like there's one thing is there's a financing mismatch, which is like you have to take speculative risk. Like if you wanna, if you like, um, you don't know yet the demand is going to materialize, right? So that to some extent that's what creates the mismatch. Like if you're in the solar business or battery business or whatever, you have to make a forward bet to some extent.
Yeah, makes sense.
You know.
What do you think? Is that demand gonna materialize? Is Stargate gonna power War GPT because War Claude is out?
I think they're gonna change the end user. OpenAI goes under and Anthropic takes it all because all of the world's gonna use $100,000 of cloud code every day, just like us at Sumi analysis. Fake numbers. It's not true. I'm not spending that.
You're so Claude Code brained now that you think OpenAI is gonna go under?
No,
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, our daily spend is kind of implying it will be. I mean, the thing is, Jesus Christ, I just looked at our daily spend. The thing that's really crazy is just like the rate of this, right? Let's just talk about the Anthropic ARR crossover, which I'm happy that dude, Jordan, I'm just gonna say, there's a reason why I didn't make this bet in 26. Because we had a bet originally, but like Anthropic is like whatever. Anthropic's at the revenue run rate that OpenAI was at the end of the year, and it's March, so it's like it's like a 2 or 3 month lead, right? It's just
That's 2 months.
so close. Yeah, two
Yeah,
months.
if you go
Sorry,
back in
time is
time,
not
not,
plural.
not to victory lap on something I didn't win, but I was so impressed by Claude Code in like September, October that I started telling Doug that they were gonna win versus OpenAI.
No, dude,
And
that
Doug
no,
won't
no,
take
no,
a
that
bet.
bet,
So
no, that bet was way before, bro. It was way before the offsite. It's like middle of the summer, man. Come on, we're gonna like I like betting,
yeah,
bro.
because the bet turned into a beer at the offsite. Yeah,
Yeah,
which was in
so it's way
October.
before September.
Okay.
I think it's way before. I
Yeah,
swear to
yeah.
God. Anyways, uh,
Okay, well it's here. It's March and it's here. ARR exit of February we think is close for Anthropic
to,
crossing over OpenAI. The whole
yeah,
company, right? Which Claude Code is a
yeah,
big part
the
of,
whole
but
company, the whole
is
company.
not necessarily Claude Code is still not the majority of Anthropic revenue currently. It's growing at a very
So
fast rate,
let's
but
No, I
let's
think
actually
it
talk
is.
about that. I think it is. I
Yeah.
think the thing is, it's yeah. Jeremy could do it because he's been model grinding on this one, but it's just how you attribute revenue, right? I
okay.
think
Yeah,
the
it's
way that
just
they're, yeah, you can look at our usage dashboard. Claude Code attribution of using Claude Max in Claude Code is what they define as Claude Code. API usage is API usage anywhere, and they do not attribute it if it's in Claude Code API mode or not. And as
Mm.
fast mode addicts, I think you can tell how we feel.
yeah. Actually, especially the 1 million context. I think fast mode is on subscription, but 1 million context just on API. But I
Yeah.
guess point is semi analysis spending is like 90-95% going to API. It's not going to the what they report as cloud code. So when they said last month they said like $2.5 billion is our annual run rate on cloud code. It's actually way too low.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, I think they have to make that to be like no, 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 no. I think it's more in their interest for generalized enterprise demand without having a ginormous vector. Be like, oh, all the enterprises are using it, and God knows what. Instead of being like it's one hyper viral thing that people are YOLOing $8 billion on. But who cares? I mean, it doesn't. I mean, it clearly the answer is revenue, and Anthropic is winning right now. Or I mean, until OpenAI comes back, but it'll be so over, so back, or whatever this week, next
So
month. Who knows?
do you think there's a like what do you think is causing the extra spike? Because there was the Super Bowl thing, now there's the conflict with the Department of War. Do you think that in a backhanded way, if the Department of War does not follow through with this supply chain risk designation for Anthropic and they can keep doing business with everybody in the US 6 months from now and possibly even repair the relationship, get back into the US, that this tweet storm at Dario actually got people to
Net promoter score positive. I mean, did you
yeah.
see the Katy Perry tweet? That is the net score promoter positive. Effectively, I'm
No, I
like
don't even
this
know
is
if it's so maybe it's both, but to me it
But
was
wait,
just
like
eyeballs. Like more people know what Claude and Anthropic means now
yep,
because they are following politics, not technology.
yes, I agree with that.
wait, do you guys actually think that had any impact on their revenue?
Yes, dude. You know it's the number one downloaded app right now. It's above OpenAI, and that happened
Yeah.
on the Department of War.
Probably not in France. Probably
Dude, we don't
better.
care. We don't care about France, bro. Back,
What do you mean? You
back,
don't like Claude?
backwater country. Claude
Claude's
is French. I
Francais.
forget. I forgot Claude is French. Yeah. I
That
hear
is
he
Yeah.
French.
takes. Have you heard that the RL? There was a meme. I can't remember who made it. I think it was near like a few during summer. Claude is lazy because he's on vacation.
C'est bon. Yeah, it is the French way. Currently, Claude is protesting, and a little bit later, he's going to go on vacation.
And then a strike afterward. Yeah.
That is the way. That's how we do stuff, man.
No, but it's overtaken. It's overtaken OpenAI, and that was, I think, on the Department of War. So as long as they don't get like as their vendors like essentially spit them out of compute, dude, I think it's gonna. I think the whole
Like,
moment's gonna.
let's talk revenue, because okay, downloads. That could be just random people like trying the app, but revenue is probably cloud code, right? So that's most likely unrelated to that specific issue.
Well, it's Claude code, but Cursor just claimed a huge acceleration as well, and they're using plenty of API tokens. I assume many of the other vibe coding startups and apps like a Windsurf, Vercel, Replit, they're all using API tokens. And then they launched Claude for Finance, Claude for Legal, and Claude for Security software, which tanked a bunch of SaaS stocks one day after the other. Um, there's somebody is buying something other than the first party Claude Code Max subscriptions. You know,
No,
it's
but
not strictly a single vector consuming the
yeah, my,
tokens.
my point is, I think like this acceleration, literally, they've added $10 billion of revenue in like 2 months.
Yeah,
Doubled the revenue in 2 months, actually.
ARR.
ARR. Doubled ARR in 2 months. I mean, I would think that's entirely driven by like true business adoption, if that makes sense, as opposed to just like temporary hype of people subscribing to the app and downloading the app in support of of Cloud and Anthropic
No,
and whatnot.
I completely
It's
agree with that,
definitely use
but it's
cases. Like,
but hey,
dog, you know this better than anyone else. Like,
yeah.
enterprises, certain companies are removing Salesforce and building their own.
Well, yeah, no, I think it's a big deal, right? Like that's the real demand driver. But I think, and I agree, that's not what's moving revenue, but it's just like a cherry on top. Like
Yeah.
they do the API crossover. That's what really is driving all of it, and then also the cherry on top is they just hit number one on downloads too. That's like we weren't even trying and we got you that way. Like that's a pretty hardcore mog. Just because everyone's like, whoa, that's not even what they're known for. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's like just a casual like, hey, this is just by the way, I also passed you on downloads this week. Kind of a big. I think that that's why it's a big deal. It's like a, for lack of a better word, it is a hype moment. It's a what is it? It's zeitgeist moment that I think that really matters, and that's like the difference. So,
Wait, so there's like a complete narrative shift because we used to say
yep,
OpenAI ChatGPT has a consumer market, and when you're the consumer like household name, it's easier to penetrate the business world, right? And now we're actually seeing the opposite way, which is no one knew Anthropic, right? They come from the business world, and now they're actually beating OpenAI on consumer. Like,
Well, okay, what seems most clear to me is that all of these people who have been speculating about how the models are commodities and therefore the value is going to be at the application layer where you can build these great experience powered by whatever model is the best fit is just completely wrong if you consider the fact that Anthropic has access to models we don't have. They have full control over the coding interface, and they can build a whole bunch of applications using that better than anybody else can, effectively for free. So the idea that Anthropic's going to come for Salesforce, Harvey for legal, CrowdStrike in the SaaS security business, and on down the line, because they've already done this to GitHub Copilot on the coding side, seems right to me. It seems like the model companies will become the everything companies as opposed to, SaaS companies deciding to build models later or picking the best Chinese open source one to power their product. Like,
I think that that universe could exist and might end up existing in the end state, but in the current state, when every 3 months the model gets better, there's no point, right? Because it's
yeah,
like if there's like an upgrade every year and you're building your thing on some upgrade every year, that's fine. Maybe you can plan it out, whatever. But there's an upgrade every 3 months. There's no way your product cadence is going to be inherently slower than the model cadence. And if the model, I mean, dude, this is the history of like like this is the history of Moore's law, right? A CPU, the CPUs won because they got 50% better every single year. So it never made any sense for any specialization ever to happen. You might as well just bet on the underlying better thing that's generally good at everything getting better next year, right? But when Moore's law ended and CPUs really topped out, that's when it became a lot of value to essentially to specialize because hey, there's no more lift of performance this way. You have to go down a specialist route. So until the generalized models don't get better every 3 to 6 months, there's no point of doing any specialization. So I think that that's we're going to see that until scaling laws top out.
yeah.
Beautiful.
I think in general I agree with you, but the specific cases, like if you're going to do specialization, the fact that they chose to do coding, which is upstream of so much other stuff, just seems like an obviously good choice. In other words, coding is the generalist thing to focus on, and you shouldn't be
I have a
specialized
question.
on
Do you
chat.
do you, I think that's definitely clearly there was a strategy there, but do you think it wasn't because they're like I think coding is special in the case that the whole point of it is you make an autonomous agent who's better able to code a better model, and that's like part of the it's inherently a part of this. Now, if they thought marketing was the way that they were going to scale, for lack of a better way, it would be a scaling marketing agent, but it isn't, right? The only thing that matters is coding for making your core products better. I think that that's the reason why they've always been so focused on coding.
Yeah, well, the thing that makes your core product better is data, and the first obvious place to get that data was in the chat interface. People vote up and down what's a good response, bad response, or you see what their time using the chat is. You can review the logs. And then that shifted when RL came out because you need a lot more signal from one sample or one really long trace in RL than you do, and therefore chat isn't quite good enough. The quality of data in coding is much higher, and so therefore the flywheel is in coding. But it's not even coding because you guys are using Claude Code for not, I mean, it's code, but it's more manipulation of your computer to build artifacts like a screenshot of a plot that we just had on screen when we were talking about the article, right? Like you're not using it for replacing software you would have written in the past. You're writing software to do something that you would have done in Excel in the past. So
Coding
it's
is
almost
just general. I mean, it's just like a more fidelity way to work with transistors, right? Like we're just so the thing is, I mean, this is like I'm going to software big brain, right? Like software historically is a layer on top of code for humans to interact with the machine, right? But since it's good enough that it can actually sit underneath software, pretty much humans are interacting with the agent that is now lower level interacting with the computer, right?
yeah,
And so you
yeah,
just totally skip out that portion because it's not valuable. And so like what's really cool for us is we're analysts, right? We're analyzing crap. But we always had to use software that's made for us to do it. But for the first time ever, it's like, dude, I don't have to learn some new piece of software. I could use the computer to make information. I don't have to like learn statistics and stats and R to be able to do crazy analysis. I don't have to learn all this crap to scrape all this stuff. I can now work with every single type of software I've ever wanted to with like all this domain expertise that I never had to learn and do whatever the hell analysis I ever wanted to do. That's the valuable part. And that's like, I mean, coding is all a portion of that, but I think coding, the reason why it's coding is because coding is close to the computer, right? And so it's just like, I really, truly, fundamentally believe LLMs, because of how compute intensive they are kind of an extension of the computing paradigm, whatever model. And
yeah. This is why we're
and agents are kind of the next level extension of compute. So I mean, it's just like all in. Instead of us like interacting with software built on top of compute, really humans are just getting closer to the computer.
yeah. This is why Jeremy was joking about just walking around with your agent in your earphones, and then you can tell it to show you the dashboard and make an update or whatever you want.
Yeah. Why do we need to do software, dude? It'll just tell us. It'll be reading CSVs into my ear, bro. That's all I want to hear.
I mean, you could, like, what if you have a, like, maybe that's the bull case for, like, DGX Spark or some of these edge computers. Like, you guys are all buying Mac Minis to run your cloud code, so you do actually need a lot of, a lot
Are
of,
you
like,
buying your Mac
local.
Mini?
I've actually come full circle, bro. VPS for life, bro. I have a DigitalOcean droplet. It's better.
Alright. So is it,
Okay,
wait, is it over for Mac Minis or
No,
what's
it's
going
I
not
on?
got
over on
remote
Mac.
SSH to my actual laptop, yeah. Or I can
Yeah.
run a container
I've
on my laptop if I want some security.
Yeah, I have a remote SSH to
Card.
my Mac Mini, and then obviously the remote SSH to DigitalOcean droplet. So sick, dude. I run cron jobs all day. More cron jobs. More cron jobs. Update the database. More. So beautiful. Sorry.
Cool.
You
No,
use
cool.
Tailscale?
Huh?
Because dude, so I mean, we were talking about Tailscale actually, because you were talking about how
Yeah,
you used it for one of the like a project you were doing, and I was like, oh, cool, I use Tailscale.
yeah.
It's pretty nifty, dude. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean
I have no idea.
it's simple stuff, but it's good. Like it's yeah, the free tier get you in option is just like log into your laptop from your phone pretty simply with a private network. But I mean, companies like CoreWeave use it for authenticating people to their clusters because it's much better than just like public IPs and SSH and trying to whitelist IPs for people who move around the world. So yeah, it's Tailscale's awesome. I mean, there's lots of software that is just like very much accelerating because of this, software companies, and then there's other software that's just totally getting left in the dust. And it's yeah, I mean, Tailscale's one of those ones. Obsidian's another one that you love, right, Doug? Like
I
these are
do,
just
but you know what's funny is I think Obsidian. I think I'm graduating from Obsidian. I think why fuck around with a
ooh,
Markdown when I can just do it in the terminal? Like I don't care actually. I've come to realize in the beginning I was like, well, I want to make sure I could read all the Markdown and all this shit to audit it, kind of like looking to like do some fine tuning. The only time I care about Markdown is in Obsidian is essentially pulling up a document to edit it for a final time and then copy and pasting it into WordPress or wherever the hell I go to. But like I literally don't like it being an Obsidian. I actually don't care. I hope and trust that the model is going to be good enough at finding information within a thing that like I think it should be abstracted away. That's my belief. But the Obsidian CLI project is pretty interesting. I mean, I was very Obsidian first in the beginning. Now I've kind of moved away from it. Maybe I'll go back. I don't know, but I think you could just have a vector database QMD crap that Toby does, and you can just search, and it'll be faster. So
yeah,
why?
absolutely. QMD, shout out Toby. Let's go.
Yeah,
Good.
dude, that's actually
These are all
pretty
Canadians,
cool.
buddy.
Oh
Tailscale,
yeah.
Obsidian, and QMD from the
Wait, are they
CEO of
really?
Shopify. Huh?
Are they? Wait, every single one of those are Canadians?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Wow, we should acquire Canada.
Yeah, the
Sorry,
royal we there, bud.
the royal we, yeah.
You and
But
your army.
hey, it wasn't even my idea, dude. It wasn't even my idea. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and hey, and that also applies to anyone listening to this podcast. If you're a Canadian tech worker, we've had a lot of good luck. Jordan over here happens to work SME analysis. We moderately like the guy, so I think we're more than happy to hire more people from Canada. So yeah, we're always looking. So, anyways, that's a complete aside. Always hiring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, shout out to Rippling, another company that's gonna accelerate as the AI wave takes over everything.
Where were
I
we?
think we're probably good to wrap up here, guys. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Anything
think
else
so.
you need
I
to
think so too.
talk about this week?
Did we talk about? Did we? You want to talk about Quen? Well, I mean, we haven't even posted about this. So I don't know what you want to talk about, dude.
We can talk about it. We can talk about it next week too.
Yeah, we can talk about it next
Leadership
week.
changes. Things are still shaking out. You got a hot take about Quen?
I don't have a hot take. I mean, it's actually a pretty cold take. After some tweets, I was like, damn, my take's pretty cold. Essentially, they kicked him out because they didn't acquire enough users on Chinese New Year's.
You
Yeah,
definitely
so
did right about that. That was a nice tokenomics update about all the Chinese New Year's competition that was going on.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is my takeaway was like Quen wasn't bad, but I think you spend, I think they probably spend like $1 billion, and they're like not good enough. So now the KPIs are all user acquisition. I mean, Taobao definitely, or like ByteDance won for sure. And it's like I think ByteDance is the only Eastern model that like everyone at SemiAnalysis wants to use through Seedance. Like I want Seedance so badly, dude.
Okay. Yeah, that was I think the thesis of that article, or at least the last little section of it that I wrote a bit about, which was like, this is, I think we've seen this for like solar panels and drones and BYD cars, where like on the margins, people are like, oh, that looks really cool, but my Tesla's still cool, so I'm not going to go out of my way to try to import a BYD. Everybody who I know who's seen the Cdance videos is like trying to figure out how to VPN their way into China and add something to that queue, which Eric posted this morning is like, how long? Like there's
It's like
whatever.
a 3-month queue or something like that. It's something incredible, dude. Like effectively, like if you want to sign up and you're trying to pay, for stuff, you're like, yeah, dude, you might be able to generate a video on Cdance in like a few months. It's kind of it's like kind
There's
of
like 150,000 requests in the queue or something.
yeah. 100, no, it's 14K out of 30K, and that's I think in the paid queue.
Oh
Oh
my
wow,
God.
so that's like old school internet. You have to wait to be in the line for your job to be done, and this is on the paid version.
Yeah, people who have
Wow.
already paid ByteDance are being told you can't even like pay more to skip the line. You just gotta wait in the queue.
Pretty sick, dude. Also, my Galaxy brain. I mean, I don't know how much inside baseball we're going to do, but like, I mean, some of this might be the demand. That might be part of the demand that we're not recognizing well that we're seeing in GPUs. Right? Is the fact that like Chinese models, yeah, maybe the retention rates weren't so great for some of them, but ByteDance clearly got some retention, and clearly the acceleration of actual users in China is going up, right?
Yeah.
With Cdance, with Quen, with all this stuff, and China has way more people in the United States. Hot take. And if they're starting to actually adopt AI, all of a sudden that's like a giant new, like not completely untapped, but a huge new demand vector that I think is just maybe underappreciated and is starting to leak to the rest of the world because China domestic can't actually support commute. So this just
So,
ends up in Singapore or Europe or everywhere else around the world. So,
so question here is like, what percentage of Anthropic revenue and cloud code comes from China?
well, allegedly
Any?
okay. So you have to know that some amount of it is because they're like, oh, malicious actors have been because the fine tune thing, right?
Oh, with
What's the
150,000
relationship
prompts?
with malicious actors, bro?
Yeah.
I mean, all of this stuff about the distillation attacks, it's like that you add up all of that stuff, it's less than one of our days spend on the API. I really don't think that's a ton
No,
of
but
their bill.
like if I remember correctly, I think we had some data maybe last year on Cursor, and something like 15% of users were from China. And I asked a bunch of people locally, and they were telling me, yeah, these tools are not blocked. Like unlike Google and some of that stuff, like you can actually use Western AI agents because
Hmm.
the local ones suck. So I actually don't know exactly on Cloud Code if it's blocked or not. I have no idea.
So I think this one is well documented, but apparently like all the Chinese labs VPN into Japan and Korea, and then they like move their sleep schedules forward so they can replicate an average Korean vibe coder. And at one point in time last year, they were like, "Oh, Korea and Japan is 15% of Anthropic's revenue." I was like, "Yeah, that's Chinese demand." There's no like, and yeah. So I mean, there's like like there's obviously usage. I mean, it's very clear who the Eastern models prefer to distill from. Claude, right? The joke is, I think one of the best jokes I've seen so far is that GLM, is it 4.6 or 5 point, or what is 4.6?
Yeah,
The
4.7.
GLM 4.7's distillation of Claude is better than Claude can do
Sonnet.
itself. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
Sonnet. Yeah, I was like, that's so fun. That's hilarious. That is just imagine if they had Claude, dude. And the other meme too is that I
I
think
think this is okay. I think GLM
yeah.
does a lot of pretty good engineering, man.
No, no,
I don't
no.
know.
I'm being okay. I'm being a little
A
facetious.
lot of
I
people
agree, dude.
dismiss a lot of
Dude,
like really interesting
yeah.
architecture decisions and useful like references
So
and papers as
sorry.
like distillation, but
Yeah, I completely sorry. Let's put a little respect on their name. I think I feel like the bleeding edge is like essentially like, razor thin. I think it's very clear that if Eastern companies had access to Western compute, we would be mobbed. There would be a new pre-train. There would like if everything was equal in terms of compute, I think they would be ahead.
I can't wait for DeepSeek V4, guys. Can't wait.
When is it coming out? When is this Enneagram? When is this memory aware galaxy brain? I don't know. We'll see.
All right, I think that's a good way to end it. Jeremy, see you in San Jose in a week and a half.
Cheers, man.
Wow.
See you in San
I'm
Jose.
jealous, dude.
Talk to you next
I
week.
want talk to you next week. I want some SIGs, dude. Where's the semi-analysis SIGs, bro? Actually, I want you to know that everyone gave me cigarette birthday gifts. I'm thinking of you, Jeremy. I'm thinking of you, bro.